Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, historians, and editorial board. We first start with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you the latest USC Trojans football news. Let's first meet this week's panelists. Mark Culkin, WeAreSC columnist who writes the Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season football and basketball practice reports. Chris Arledge, former William Jewell College defensive back and team captain, WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular column Musings with Arledge and is a graduate of the USC Law School. Eric McKinney, welcome back, editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com, as well as a columnist, senior writer, nationally recognized recruiting analyst, and a USC graduate. And Greg Katz, that's me, that your moderator and producer of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes the obvious and not so obvious IMHO Sunday, and an active member of the Football Writers Association of America. Before we kick off this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here is the latest USC football news as of today's Monday evening taping. The Trojans offensive line recruit Michael Banuelos from Burien, Washington, was expected to announce his college choice on Friday after having originally set July 4th as his announcement day. However, Banuelos, 6'3", 285, has again rescheduled his announcement for July 25th, a Monday. He's expected to choose from Oregon, Washington, and the Trojans. And this Wednesday, July 13th, four-star Houston, Texas edge Braylon Shelby is scheduled to make his announcement. It's being reported by WeAreSC.com's Scott Schrader that it's between the Trojans and Texas, and the Longhorns have a slight lead, according to the On3 recruiting prediction machine. On Monday, Lucas Simmons, a 6'7", 295-pound, four-star class of 2023 offensive tackle from Clearwater, Florida, has made his college choice from among USC, Florida State, Florida, and Tennessee. Simmons, who attends Clearwater Academy International in Clearwater, Florida, has committed to the Florida State Seminoles. And Trojan sophomore defensive back Sierra Wright, who also doubles as a professional actor, has announced through his social media site that he's become a new fifth season cast member in the TV show Grownish. Wright made a previous theatrical national name for himself when he appeared in the movie Space Jam: A New Legacy, which featured Lakers superstar LeBron James. And finally, friends, WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle greatly appreciates your viewer and listenership. And we encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube to click on the red subscriber button and also the like button. It's greatly valued and it is free. There's the bell. It's the opening kickoff of the first quarter. So it's time for our first topic. Panel, is USC President Carol Folt being unfairly blamed as a scapegoat by other Pac-12 member schools for allegedly having been secretive and disingenuous in regards to USC's desire to relocate to the Big Ten Conference? Is Dr. Folt getting a raw deal here, or is there a deeper scapegoat? Let's find out. We'll start off with our leadoff hitter, Mark Culkin. What say you?
Absolutely. She's getting a raw deal, without a doubt. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that the person who should be blamed is George Kliavkoff and the rest of the Pac-11. Whether it's true or not, there's some good, strong sources out there who know that. People might remember when George was doing his meet and greet tour with each of the schools when he came on board, came around, met the media, the different athletic directors, and went around to different schools. Well, around that time, USC let George know that they had plans to leave the conference. So the Pac-12 is known for a year, allegedly. So no, she's definitely getting the raw deal. She signed off on this. This isn't like a 48-hour decision you make, hey guys, let's move. You're not just breaking a lease agreement. They're doing a big major decision here. So everybody's known about this. I just don't think anybody thought USC would actually pull the trigger. So it's kind of like, a politician getting caught on a hot mic laughing behind everybody's back. This is what happened to the Pac-12.
All right, Chris Arledge, what say you? You're the lawyer. Is she getting a raw deal? Do you need a defender?
I'm not going to defend her. I'm going to applaud her. Look, I don't know what USC did or did not tell the Pac-12 or its members. I know that the people who run the Pac-12 have run it right into the ground, and they've been doing that for a very long time, which is why people have been talking for years about USC making a move like this. In fact, people have been talking for years about USC making this very move. I know I have, and I've been writing about it. I don't expect that the presidents of those universities read Musings with Arledge, although maybe they should. But look, it's not like this was a secret. USC was making $30,000 a year working at a company that's constantly on the verge of bankruptcy. And now they've been offered $300,000 to go work for a Fortune 500 company. And people are going to have their feelings hurt that they left. I mean, it's absurd. But the truth is, the people who run the Pac-12 are so inept that they couldn't organize a mean tweet anyway. So it doesn't really matter if they're happy or if they're unhappy. They ran the conference into the ground, and now all of them are looking for lifeboats of their own. Most of them aren't going to get it. That's just the way it goes. So, I don't. They might be upset with her. I'm thrilled with her. It's about time USC has shown some guts.
All right, Eric, you do renting out of lifeboats. What do you think about Carol Folt? Is she being unfairly tattooed on this one?
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the Pac-12 10, what's left, is upset with USC for doing something where USC is acting in their best interest. And you gotta say it's about time that the rest of the conference is upset with USC for doing that and not happy that they're around to be able to kick around on the field. And so that, I think, is a big part of this. Is USC is kind of saying, no, this is our way forward, right? This is the best way forward. And I look back to when athletic director Mike Bohn got there and Brandon Sosna shows up, kind of his chief of staff, right hand man. The yelling from USC fans was, you have to fire Clay Helton immediately. And their pushback, not so much directly, but what you could tell they were doing is, we're not going to do anything just in terms of a gut reaction and flailing out and doing something. And I don't know if immediately, hey, we need to join the Big Ten was on that to-do list, but doing something big with USC football and the program, absolutely, I think was on that list. And when it became clear that this was it was a slow move, right? Carol Folt needs to go hire Urban Meyer right now. And so there was a lot of kind of calculated things, pushback from pushing back, I guess, at what a lot of USC fans wanted them to do immediately. You have to flail it. You got to fire your coach. You got to hire this guy. You got to do this. This was kind of a 2+ year plan where they really got themselves in what I think is, I mean, you look at it now, right? You've got Lincoln Riley as your head coach, and you're going to join easily one of the two best conferences, maybe the best conference in kind of how it's positioned. The SEC certainly would push back on it being the best, but one of the two conferences that you have to be in with a top, 3, 5, no lower than 5 head coach for football. So in terms of what other people want to say, what the conference wants to do, whatever, no, Carol Folt and the people in charge of USC finally looked out for what was best for USC and got rid of the anchor that was really kind of pulling them down and pulling at them for a decade. And I would push back at this idea of, well, if USC had been doing what they should have been doing for a decade, the Pac-12 wouldn't be in this situation. Yes, that's true. But these people at USC now weren't the ones that have been doing that for a decade. So when they came in, hey, they picked up a poker hand, right? This is what I have to play. This is my best play. And I think they executed it to perfection in kind of how this has worked out for them, because they go to a conference that needs them in a way too. So they're not just kind of flocking and we'll go wherever, will have us. They've got some power going into the Big Ten as well.
Well, I'll say this about Carol Folt. She's taken a lot of guff when she came here. Some of it, in my opinion, deserved. There's been a lot of things that have transpired, but this certainly isn't one of them. She is no scapegoat. I can go back to the 1960s. John McKay had said openly he felt that SC should consider being independent, just like Notre Dame. And he also believed that it was ridiculous that the money that SC was getting was the same as a Washington State. It made no sense. Well, times were obviously much different back then. I think if you asked the Silver Fox about it now, he'd probably say, what took you so long, 40, 50 years or what have you? And I remembered that quote. The free gravy train is over. I think in probably 5, 6 years from now, people look back on this and they'll laugh about it. They'll say, of course they left. Why wouldn't they leave? I mean, honestly, for UCLA, it's a great deal. They can ride the caboose for USC and get all their debts paid off. They're going to get hammered in football. No offense, Bruin fans. You're great with basketball. You'll hang in there in the Big Ten. But football-wise, I don't think you're going to be seeing the Big Ten championship game anytime soon. So,
I mean,
yeah,
think
Mark,
about it.
go ahead.
Vanderbilt football was making more money than USC football.
What more do you need to know than that?
And the schools in the Pac-12, right? You're talking about Washington State, Oregon State. Oregon, they all used USC as kind of this stepping stone, this, I guess, kind of foot ladder to climb up and get what they were getting. Again, in a vacuum, I like playing the Pac-12 schools, right? I like being in the Pac-12, those rivalries, the regional stuff. I think that's special. I think that's a special part of college football. You can't voluntarily put yourself, 20 miles below the teams that you want to compete against nationally just to be able to play Arizona State and just to be able to do the weekender every year. At a certain point, if you want to be serious about football, you need to be serious about football.
Well, that's a good point, because the Pac-12 is not serious about football. I mean, Oregon cares, but Oregon's got a ceiling because they don't have a recruiting territory. Washington's had moments where they're good, but they've been more of a mess in USC for much of the last 20 years. So it's a conference that isn't serious about football and hasn't been for a very long time. For them to complain that now that USC has decided they want to be serious about football, that we're abandoning them, we got a different perspective on this. Cal doesn't care about football. They don't care. So why should we care about being in a conference with Cal? Well, we can continue to drown with those guys while everybody else is making, the people we want to compete with are going to make 3, 4, 5 times what we're making. It just doesn't make any sense. So who cares what they think?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be interesting down the line. And so let's move to the second quarter. Staying on the Pac-12 mentality here, we begin the second quarter with this topic. Panel, given the emotions by other Pac-12 schools after the announcement of the Trojans departing for the Big Ten in 2024, what kind of reception do you anticipate USC athletic teams will receive when they travel to the Pac-12 schools in 2022 and 2023? Eric, what do you think? What's the reception going to be?
It will be some of the worst fan behavior that Pac-12 schools have ever seen. I think the and especially the feelings right now, it might tone down if by the time the season rolls around, and especially the 2023 season, those programs know where they're going and they're comfortable with where they're going to wind up. But if it's something like Oregon fans feel right now, where I mean, the analogy I've used is USC kind of took Oregon out into the desert, dug a shallow grave, and drove away with their water bottle. Like that is where, if Oregon doesn't land somewhere kind of cushy, that's sort of where they find themselves right now. No, this is going to be it's going to be brutal. They already were going to be pretty brutal just because Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams were going to show up, and USC, cheated by paying a lot of attention to football and trying to do what's best for their program and going out and getting a good coach and recruiting a quarterback. Again, in their eyes, that kind of word. So it was already going to be brutal. It's going to be something else. That trip, I mean, you get the Stanford trip where maybe the Stanford fans show up, maybe they don't. I don't know if it's in their schedule this year to go to this one. And so there aren't a ton of like crazy hostile places that you're going, but that Utah trip is going to be that's going to be I think maybe the loudest venue in the Pac-12 this year. That's going to be something to see.
All right, Culkin, How bad is it going to be? You go to the away games. You've been going to games before. You're with WeRSC.com. Scale of 1 to 10. How horrible is it going to be?
Oh, it's, if you enjoy that type of fan interaction camaraderie, it's gonna be a lot of fun. If you don't, you bring some earplugs and bring a thick skin because you're gonna be hearing it. Now, to answer Eric's question, Stanford's fall quarter starts Monday, the 14th of September. We start, the game is what, the 10th?
Mm-hmm.
So their students should be up there last weekend of getting liquored up before they hit the books. It's going to be brutal. I'm looking forward to it. So, the next game it'll be nice to go up to Corvallis and say goodbye for the last time. We'll be playing in front of half a stadium, literally, because half the stadium is no longer standing as they are doing their rebuild. So that'll be interesting. Maybe we don't have to listen to that buzzsaw anymore, but that's been a house of horrors for USC over the years. Everybody knows who follows them. The Fog Bowl. You were around, Greg, when they lost 3-0. No, I don't think any of us were alive at that point, or I might have been a baby. So, and then Eric brought up the Utah game. Yeah, that one's going to be, assuming both teams are playing up to their capabilities. The state of Utah, the people there are really friendly. They are always smiling, and they will extend a hand and offer you the shirt off their back. It's gonna be interesting to see the Jekyll and Hyde of that fan base when we get up there, because that's going to be a night game. And October 15th, yeah, it'll be fun. And then Tucson, who cares? Maybe I'll get another easy grope out of a girl who jumps up, but other than that, we finish off in our.
Whoa.
Mark, what are you talking about, Mark?
What just happened?
Come on, baby. What are you talking about?
We talked about that before in another show. How
Groping?
A young lady ran up, jumped up, gave me a tongue massage. Anyways, moving on, we finish our road season at UCLA, which isn't really at anywhere but our second home. So Stanford and Utah are going to be the games that everybody should look forward to if you're a fan.
Chris, I think I know where you're going to end up, but I'd be disappointed if you don't end up where I think you're going to go on this final farewell tour and obnoxious fans on the visiting end. So go for it.
Well, I don't know where you think I'm going to go. I'm still a little hung up on that whole Mark Hulkin thing. I don't understand.
You don't even listen.
I mean, well, look, if you're going to start talking about groping, I'm going to stop paying attention because that kind of stuff is not okay anymore, Mark.
I didn't do it. I was the victim.
I don't want, I don't want to hear about it anymore. It's not okay. Listen, we're not playing on the road at Cal or Oregon. So you're not going to deal with the conference's classiest fans. You probably won't get the sort of salty language and even batteries thrown at you this year because we don't have those two on the schedule. Utah was going to be loud and hostile anyway. Maybe it'll be a little bit more jacked up than it would have been, but I don't know. I mean, Utah knows that that's the game for their season and may very well decide whether they're in the playoffs. So they were already going to be pumped up. Stanford, I don't know. I would expect the same type of arrogance and indifference that you get from Stanford fans all the time. So I don't know that that's going to be that interesting. Yeah, look, opposing fans have never liked USC, and it's always a game that they get up for, and they'll be more up for it this time. But being that most of those teams are terrible anyway, who cares?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think that the most obnoxious fans is not going to be this season. It's going to be next season when USC, according to what I saw, schedule goes to Autzen Stadium in Oregon. I think that's going to, by far, you can add up all the places SC goes this year in the conference, won't even come close to the fans in Oregon. I remember I was doing a story for ESPN and I was sitting in the stands and I couldn't believe what was coming out of the mouths of these people. It was unbelievable. It was just like really? So I don't know what they'll do, but they'll do something. But I think that I don't think Utah will be any more than it's always been. The fans there are pretty classy. They're going to be jacked up. They're going to see, in my opinion, they're going to be ready to go. It's the conference, title on the line, perhaps. Maybe 2 undefeated teams, possibly. So there'll be a lot of things in terms of just who wins and who loses. But I just think the following year at Oregon is going to be a whole different ball game. And we don't even know if Oregon's going to be in the Big Ten or they're not going to be in the Big Ten. There's a lot of variables. Mark, you want to say something?
I was going to ask Eric, if USC dropped Oregon off in the desert in a shallow grave, where did USC leave Utah, who was just finishing unpacking?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, we defended Carol Folt and all that. I'm not telling these fan bases and programs that they shouldn't be upset. I mean, every right? Like you talked about kind of riding coattails and gravy train, and USC football was a godsend to them. I mean, it was a very good thing to anyone in the Pac-12. So the anger is certainly understandable. Like, these programs are going to be upset, and they better be working the phones, because I think you need to land somewhere. There's some hope, I think, that the Pac-10 stays together, and if you add teams, then maybe you're there. But boy, that you start looking at the revenue gap and what that's going to be per year, and that is just it's insurmountable. And again, it would have been for USC, even if they had put it together, and whatever your media rights deal is going to be, those other conferences were going to shoot past that. That was Larry Scott's thing, was always, once we negotiate, we're going to end up with a better deal than that. And it's like, for a day, but they're going to negotiate, and get a new deal and just shoot right by you. So making up that gap was, it's never going to be a possibility.
I'm looking forward to that intra-conference rivalry game between Oregon and San Jose State. I think that's going to be a barn burner. And I think Oregon fans will be so focused on that they won't even pay attention to USC next year.
Some of these Pac-10 schools are going to, Pac-10, Pac-12 schools are going to mess around and get North Dakota State on the schedule and just get obliterated by some of these programs. Boise State can put a team together if they bump up a level too.
All right. It's halftime. Now, this should be an interesting question, panel. With the addition of USC and UCLA in 2024, what will the Big Ten's Eastern and Western divisions look like beginning that 2024 season? And which 2 current Big Ten Western Division teams will be moving to the Big Ten Eastern Division to make room for the Trojans and Bruins, who figure to be entering the Western Division? Now, for your information, the current Big Ten West Division teams consist of Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Purdue. Chris, who's going to the Eastern Division?
Yeah, I mean, that assumes that that's the way they're going to break it up. I'm not sure if we know that right now, but and geographically, there's not really a compelling reason why any of those teams would be moved east or west. Maybe Nebraska is an obvious fit in the west, but and maybe to some extent Iowa. But really, they're all sort of in the same general area. I would hope that they would move out Illinois, just because I'm sorry, Illini, but Illinois is really ugly. I don't mean the state. I mean the football program. Like, the uniforms are ugly and the quality of play is ugly, and I just don't want to watch them. USC's played some games against Illinois over the last couple of decades. I remember RJ Soward going like 97 on a long touchdown pass against them, but they're just ugly to watch, and I would prefer not to. So I'm hopeful that Illinois is gone. The other one, I don't much care. Maybe move Purdue out of there so that you don't have multiple trips to Indiana. The years we play at Notre Dame, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're going to break it up that way, and I don't know that I have strong feelings. I would hope that Wisconsin will stay. I would hope that Nebraska will stay, because I'd like to go see games there. I think it'd be fun to watch games at Iowa, so I would hope they would stay as well. But I don't really care that much about that.
Eric, you've spent some time in the Midwest, back in the Chicago area. So who are you moving to the, under the current divisions? Who would you move to the Big Ten East?
There is no Big Ten East. That there won't be divisions. I think with the NCAA saying that you don't have to have division winners in a championship game, and the Pac-12 immediately announcing we're doing away with division winners in our championship game, I think that's just kind of the roll towards there are no divisions. You've seen ACC has sort of put out I think it's what 3-3-5 where you're grouped with two other teams or three other teams that you play every year and then kind of rotate around. I think that's kind of the future for a lot of these things rather than a specific East-West look. So that's what I'm going to say is that there won't be an East-West by the time that they get there, because again, we're talking about something where we have the information for it right now. In 6 months, there's 6 more teams or 10 more teams or 2 more teams or whatever it is. But this is just, I mean, you're kind of hopping from, I don't know what the analogy is, but if there's a lava flow and you're trying to land on the solid pieces of ground right now, like you got to keep moving because this thing is changing sort of that quickly. And so what the conference looks like right now, it may not look like that in 8 months or 8 weeks or certainly 2 years. And so that's kind of what I think that college football is moving towards overall is maybe the conferences, but not so specific East-West or 2 divisions.
Mark, how do you see it?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to add. I mean, I like the question. I think we'll probably be moving more towards a pod type of format where the type of scheduling that Eric was talking about works. But I guess if we're just looking at your question specifically, I would agree with Chris. Let's move Purdue. We don't need to go to Indiana, twice in the same season. And I want to go to Northwestern. I hear that's a nice place to visit. So agree. Let's move Illinois.
Do you agree that Illinois is ugly though?
I've never been to Champaign.
No, I'm not talking about the city. I'm talking about just Illinois football is just ugly.
Yeah.
When you asked me,
you said you remember RJ Sauer. You don't even remember us beating them in the Rose Bowl, years later.
So that's how ugly. Even that was ugly.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the only ugly Rose Bowl game I can remember. It's just, I mean, I'm sorry, Illini. Look, I think the Illini fans probably know this. It's just something that's ugly about all of their games. I just don't. Maybe they can just be moved. Maybe we can do a trade. Maybe we can send them to the Pac-12.
I'm trying to even figure out who they would be in the Pac-12. Which school they most closely align to, and there's just no comparison. Eric, who would you compare Illinois to in this conference? Because
no, I don't know. I mean, Chris is right. Like the orange
people
and
you
the
wouldn't even know
blue
were at a
is
party.
weird. And honestly, my high school, we were orange and blue. So I've had enough of that. I don't need to see that anymore. The one school, Northwestern, is the school. My wife went to Northwestern, and I lived back there for a year. Have a lot of friends that went there. So that I'm excited about having them on the schedule, and I feel good for my friends now that Northwestern is going to have a guaranteed trip to the Rose Bowl every so many years. I mean, it's been a while since they've been able to see that.
Very interesting. I will say, staying with the question, I think that Purdue would get moved. So that gives a rivalry between Indiana and Purdue. And I think that my original thought was Northwestern. But I think since Illinois is further down the state, I can flip them to the Eastern Division.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you doing that for me.
Well, I did it for you. Actually, it's very sentimental for me for Northwestern because I did the 1996 public address at the Rose Bowl between USC and Northwestern, and I thoroughly enjoyed the fans from Northwestern. They were so appreciative of being there, and it was just a great time for everybody there. So I have
especially Keyshawn.
Yeah. Well, Keyshawn had a wonderful day.
Oh.
I would have rooted for Northwestern if USC wasn't playing.
Yeah,
this is very touching. Very touching.
I think everybody wanted them to win, to be honest.
All right, we come to before the second half kickoff. Reminder that you're watching or listening to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle. This week's WeRSC panelists include Mark Culkin, Chris Arledge, Eric McKinney, and I'm Greg Katz. We also encourage you to check out WeRSC.com's website, part of the On3 network. Become a subscriber to the best coverage of USC football and Trojans athletics. And as a reminder, WeRSC is currently offering a WeRSC 7-day free trial, which includes monthly or yearly payment options to view our exclusive On3 Plus content, which includes breaking stories, analysis, data for USC football, basketball, and the balance of USC athletics. All right, third quarter, NIL. We kick off the second half with this question. Based on what we're seeing, panel, how concerned are you that USC is possibly losing blue chip recruits to other universities because the Trojans are allegedly, and I use the word allegedly, not competing at the same financial NIL level? Mark, what's going on here?
I'm not concerned. It is what it is. And people can bury their heads in the sand and say it's not happening. It's happening. I mean, look, it's no coincidence that USC is having a lot of success recruiting skill position players, grabbing, the elite talent out of the transfer portal. There's one specific area that they are just having minimal success, and that's getting the elite recruits that play in the trenches. And we know the schools and the programs that are getting them, and they're allegedly putting out some really nice NIL packages. Some have said they're, life-changing, as they're being described. So I don't know if I'm concerned. It's just a matter of, when is USC going to get out of the shallow end of the pool and go start playing in the deep end with everybody else?
Mark, let me ask you a question. Are you surprised on the NIL that it's focusing on offensive linemen? Does that
No, I think it is such a unique position, a group, I kind of wrote about this. If you're a quarterback, wide receiver, even a running back, if you get hurt, there's a greater opportunity for you to go through rehab and play at a high level again. As a lineman, you're a big dude. You carry a lot of weight. You tear an ACL, you'll rehab, but the chances of you coming back to what you were before or being able to get to what you want to be, those chances decrease. So those guys want money up front. And so I get it. I don't know. I think that's how people are using, I think that's how certain programs are using NIL to their advantage to recruit certain positions, how they're presenting the package.
Krista, from your viewpoint, are you seeing SC competing on the NIL level for offensive linemen or in general?
Well, if we are, we're not competing very well. You asked if I'm concerned. Look, on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm at about a 4.5 level of concern right now because USC seems to be falling behind some other programs when it comes to landing the top big guys, and they're going to have to fix that. If they don't fix that, it's going to be a problem for the program. The only reason I'm not at a 5 level of concern is that I'm pretty sure that Lincoln Riley does not intend to stake his career on a program that isn't going to do what the other major programs are doing. So I think USC will probably fix this. Whether they fix it in time to salvage a top offensive line recruiting class this year, I don't know. There is still a lot of time. I mean, there is still a lot of time. And just because these guys are committing to these other schools now, it doesn't mean USC can't persuade them later. I'm going to touch on this a little bit in my thing in a few minutes, so I'm not going to say any more than that, other than to say that, yeah, I'm concerned.
Eric, you're really tied into the recruiting. Is this a big issue?
Yeah, I'm going to try to talk a lot to see if I can get as many of Chris's points ahead of time and just guess what's in his thing coming later.
You'll never get my points, Eric. You'll never get it.
It's a huge issue. I think 4.5 out of 5 is probably right now. And that's talking about if we're talking about how things are going right now, right? If the way USC is attacking this right now continues to be the way they attack it forever, no, they're really not going to land big time guys that feel like they can play left tackle. And those guys we're starting to get a sense of how much it takes. And I'm not going to say it's NIL because it's not NIL. It's this other pay for play that people can put under the NIL umbrella. But again, I think, so going back, the way USC is doing NIL, true NIL in how the idea was brought about, I think is one of the best in college football with the Boulevard thing and all of that sort of stuff. It really is. You hear sort of NIL lawyers and experts and whatever talk about it, and that's their thought. This is exactly what it's supposed to be. This sets these student athletes up for huge success in how to take advantage of this. USC is not really playing the pay for play NIL in air quotes for high school kids right now. And if you're talking about how concerning is that in terms of, are they going to get guys at the same rate as those programs who are doing that? No, they're not. They're not. And so that becomes something where, do you want to get into that? Can you get into that? How do you get into that? And how do you really start kind of fighting with those programs? I think USC is set up to do really well in the transfer portal. I think once these guys sort of get over this, oh, that's a lot of money, and then you realize down the road, like, wait, that's not actually going to set me up for, years and years down the line. I do have to figure something else out. They get it when they come as transfers and look at USC and what it has to offer and kind of that setup that they have for them there. That's when it clicks. What I'm interested about is when we get into September, October, November, that's like decommit season, right? That's always where it is. And you've got 400, 500, 600 guys flipping commitments. These contracts that a lot of these recruits are signing, I am very interested because there are some dumb contracts out there that a lot of these high school recruits are signing, to where it may end up where they get actually the lowdown if they try to decommit, and it's, you can't make any money off NIL or whatever for 3 years now because you signed this contract back in whatever. So that's something that I think maybe there's a wrench still in here to figure out. Now, again, there may be easy ways out, or maybe you haven't signed it yet until you sign your letter of intent, however that works. But that's something I think to keep an eye on, sort of how those are worded and what student athletes have signed away without really understanding what they're getting into. Because again, in anything like this where there's money involved, there's going to be some shady characters that jump in right away. And especially early on, we heard stories all the time about student athletes signing these contracts that were just unbelievably one-sided, and they would give up NIL rights like in perpetuity, where they could never make anything outside of this group that they were signing with. So again, that to me is fascinating. A different aspect right now, watching offensive linemen who love USC, love the visit, spoke so highly of it, love the coaches, love the other recruits that are going there. And at the end of the day, I can't turn this down for myself or my family. Yeah, that's something where other programs have really figured out how to seal it at the end.
Well,
By the way, if you're a 5-star offensive lineman who wants to decommit so you can go to USC, and somebody's telling you that the contract won't let you, please give me a call. I'm going to start a new pro bono program where I help athletes in that position.
There you go.
I'm only half joking.
Well, I think the bottom line was money is the root of all evil. Money dictates everything. Change of conference, commitments. Although I think that Eric's point is very well taken. What happens when somebody says, no, I think in late November, December, I'm gonna switch, and they've already signed some sort of contract? I think the what could hit the fan on that one, because you'll take the money and run. You might regret that at the time that you sign the contract. And we know how many decommitments, like Eric has pointed out. So it will be fascinating to see when this monkey wrench gets thrown into it sometime in November or early December. All right. Well, you know what that bell means, and you know what, well, how else can I put it? It's time for the traditional lighting of the Chris Arledge Coliseum torch. So there we go. I hope you all have a chance to see it. But before Chris does his thing, a reminder, any comments or opinions expressed by Chris Arledge are solely for those of his own and not in any shape or form a reflection or the opinions of our panel, We Are SC, or On3 Network. Any republication, rebroadcast, use, or descriptions of Musings with Arledge without the express written consent of the Library of Congress and the Big Ten Conference is strictly prohibited. So ladies and gentlemen, now we bring you a very popular segment of Inside the Huddle. It's time for Christopher Arledge's Musings with Arledge.
Thank you, Greg. Last week, for the first time ever, I had a chance to talk about USC's entry into the Big Ten. I'm going to have a lot to say about our new Big Ten competition in the coming weeks and months. But today, I just wanted to say hello. I wanted to say hello to our old friends from the Big Ten. We obviously have a lot of history with you guys, and we appreciate you sending us a lifeboat so that we could escape this sinking ship, formerly known as the Conference of Champions. Just ignore the screams of the Ducks and the Huskies. They're going to be okay. Now, I must say, I'm a little bit embarrassed that we haven't done a better job of keeping in touch. We spent the first decade of this millennium blowing you guys out, and then we just dropped off the map. I mean, we saw each other occasionally. James Franklin worked his special brand of magic to give away a Rose Bowl game to us. And we had a few outings in San Diego and Dallas with Wisconsin, Iowa, and Ohio State. But those were basically costume parties. I mean, there were people on the lawn wearing USC football uniforms, but you could still kind of tell that it wasn't really a USC football team. Kind of like when you go to a Halloween party and you see some girl in an outfit that's supposed to be ancient Egyptian, but you're still pretty sure that she's not exactly Cleopatra. So now that USC has decided to join the Big Ten, I just want to introduce ourselves and to be honest, try to explain what we've been up to, because it's been a little bit weird. The truth is we've been busy, mostly with criminality and incompetence. The people that ran our university were very busy raising money. I mean, lots of money, billions of dollars, mostly so they could pay legal fees and settlements because they kept a monster in the basement. And when you do that, you're going to end up paying for it eventually. Now, with the administration tied up in money collection, criminality, and corruption, we didn't have time for sports and other hobbies. So instead of hiring a real professional athletic director, we awarded that position to a series of bored former athletes who were trying to decide between becoming an athletic director or, I think, a Walmart greeter. And we outbid Walmart for their services. That probably wasn't wise. With this series of real-world Al Bundys running the athletic department, their underlings chose to engage in their own form of corruption, essentially using their positions to help B-list celebrities buy admission into USC for their intellectually challenged offspring. And that sounds gross, but in fairness, you've got to understand that if the athletic department didn't help these kids, they would go where other kids who are intellectually challenged and have little work ethic end up, like the University of Oregon. And you can imagine how humiliating it would be at the next Brentwood cocktail party to say that your kid attends there. So I kind of get why it happened. But with athletic department officials so occupied, USC didn't have an opportunity to hire a real football coach, which is really the core problem for us over the last decade. So Pat Hayden channeled his inner Norman Dale and hired Shooter Sarkisian right before Washington could fire him. And then he promptly fired Shooter when he shockingly showed up on the job drunk. Hayden then replaced the Shooter with, and I don't want you to laugh, people, because you're going to laugh. You're going to think I'm joking, but I'm actually being as honest as I can be. Replaced him with the real-life Elmer Fudd, whose primary career accomplishments up to that point included holding Shooter's clipboard, being on the staff at Powerhouse Western Kentucky, and having Bugs Bunny put a cork in the barrel of his shotgun, to a devastating and hilarious effect, I might add. Now, Elmer was here for years, many long years, allegedly on the theory that Elmer Fudd wouldn't embarrass the university the way Shooter did, which is true so long as nobody actually watched Elmer on the sideline or watched his team on the field. And the Pac-12 network did its best to help with that. So we kept Elmer in charge up until the point when basically the entire team gave up. We hit rock bottom. We decided to get our act together. We started eating better. We started hitting the gym. We gave the corrupt president a permanent seat on the board of trustees, sent some other people to jail, and decided to rebuild our football program. Now, here's where things get fun. Because I want you to imagine there's a state out there where the only thing the people in that state have, the only thing they really care about is the football team. Now, I don't know, Big Ten fans, if you can imagine such a place. Well, Nebraska, you can. But we found a place like that called Oklahoma, and we went and stole their young, popular football coach. And you should have seen the reaction. Those people lost their minds. I mean, I think they did. Truth is, we've been hanging out on the beach, doing a lot of yoga. We've gotten very spiritual lately, so we're only half paying attention. But from what I've heard, the Okies lost their minds. They simply couldn't believe that somebody would leave Norman to live in a $17 million beach home in a place where it's 78 degrees every day. It's easy to imagine why they'd be confused by that. Anyway, the Okies will be fine. Don't worry about them. They tell us the old coach was terrible anyway, and they hired a new guy who's so much better. Side note on that, their new guy, super weird. He literally has to pay somebody to stand there and hold him to keep him from running onto the field. Like he's a giant child who's been eating candy for 8 straight hours and might at any second run into the street or jump into the pool. You have to keep a close eye on him. I'm sure they will keep a close eye on him because they have nothing else worth looking at there. And maybe they'll just put a giant toddler leash on him to keep him safe. I hope so. But back to USC. What's going to happen now? Honestly, we don't know. I mean, we'll definitely be better than we've been. The new guy is actually qualified to run a football program, which is kind of a cool change for us. But running a college football team these days is kind of like running a business in Mexico. You absolutely must budget for all of the necessary bribes. You see, these days, you can't get good football players without paying them gargantuan signing bonuses. This has come as a shock to some of the straight-laced coaches of the SEC, who have never before dreamed that college football players might get paid money to play. Nick Saban, I hear, is so stunned that they keep the defibrillator within 10 feet of him at all times. But surprising as it may seem, high school kids and their families are intrigued by the possibility that they can take home giant bags of cash. And they've been willing to do some pretty risky things to get those bags, like agreeing to play football at Louisville, Tennessee. This new state of affairs has spread even to places you wouldn't expect, like the upstanding University of Miami, former home to crack NCAA rules enforcer Paul D. Under Paul D, who must be spinning in his grave, Miami football players were once limited to 3 hookers and 4 kilograms of coke per week. But now, with D and his deep commitment to righteous living out of the picture, the floodgates have opened, and Miami is paying NFL salaries to land high school football players. So USC has a decision to make. Are they willing to pay to land recruits? So far, the answer has been no. I know you're surprised by this. I am too, to be honest. But it's true. USC spent months hyping a new NIL program only to announce something that nobody really understands and which quite clearly does not offer any upfront money, which means USC recruits are currently being told the equivalent of, don't take that suitcase full of cash from our competitors, take stock in our new startup instead. It doesn't yet have a product. We don't really understand it, but we think the business could be great someday. As George Michael used to sing, you got to have faith, faith, faith. So far, that pitch is going about as well as expected. It appears that USC is still spooked by NCAA's draconian sanctions in the Reggie Bush case. I don't know if you remember this, Big Ten fans, but USC got into some trouble because one of its Heisman Trophy winners was getting some money on the side. An almost unheard of thing that has probably only taken place with every Heisman winner since Roger Staubach. Now, in any event, USC is still suffering from PTSD. They're pretending that the NCAA rules are actually still enforceable. USC thinks that the NCAA is Wyatt Earp, when the reality is at this point, it's more like the drunk girl in the Cleopatra costume at the Halloween party. She probably isn't paying any attention to you at all. And if she is, she probably doesn't intend to offer much resistance to your plans. So what will happen? USC could start paying signing bonuses to recruits. Ryan Day just asked for $13 million for his next recruiting class. I suspect he'll get it, and I suspect he'll use it wisely. USC could do the same if it wants to compete with the top programs. Or USC could take the leftovers, the players that the paying firms have chosen not to pay. We used to call those types of players amateurs in the old days. The USC decision on this won't really affect Purdue or Illinois. You guys have a whole lot of beatdowns coming your way regardless. But USC's decision could have a significant impact on Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Does USC want to join the Big Ten? Or does it want to try and win the Big Ten? I don't think anybody really knows that yet. Either way, at least Elmer Fudd is now hunting wascally wabbits down in Georgia. So regardless, for all of us, life is good.
All right, with that, we begin the fourth quarter question. Panel, last week, Fox Sports College Football sent out a tweet that asked viewers to respond that if the Big Ten expanded to 20 teams, which of the schools shown in a graphic should be added? In the tweet, the school options were Washington, Oregon, Notre Dame, Kansas, Virginia, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Clemson, Duke, Iowa State, Stanford, and Cal. So panel, do you think it was ethical that Fox, which is said to be a major player behind the Big Ten expansion curtain, should be doing a national media poll regarding future Big Ten expansion? Eric, what's your thoughts on that? Eric, can we hear you?
Yeah, ethical or not ethical, I don't know. It was a shot and probably weak and probably unnecessary. And I'd sort of leave it at that. I do think that if again the idea is that Fox is this involved in sort of getting all this to happen and making this work, then you stay out of stuff like that. But I also don't think that whoever put that graphic together and sent that tweet out was involved in the high level discussions of what's going on in moving conferences and bringing programs around. So, I don't think it's something where we should have to investigate Fox for doing that. But, it does come out as a slap in some of the programs that aren't listed there. And certainly the conference commissioners that have their teams listed in there. Hey, who should we take next? Basically, is what it comes out as.
I completely disagree with Eric. Completely disagree. I think the person that sent out that tweet really is the person making the decision, and I think they really are going to base their expansion plans on who wins that online poll. So, Iowa State fans, I mean, get sending your tweets now, because I think there's a legitimate chance that you could get in instead of Notre Dame.
No, I change everything I said. That's it. That's what I meant to say.
This is Fox's way of doing a market research analysis. They are getting their feedback. It's the same way some might say our country's being run right now. So when in Rome, hit Twitter, find out what everybody wants.
You had me a little scared there when you said in Rome based on some of your previous comments, but well put.
You guys really need to get your mind out of it.
Hey, you need to clean up your act, Culkin. We're not going to.
I was the victim.
I don't even believe your story, by the way. I don't believe that happened.
We'll get to that.
I don't think some random woman. I just don't believe it.
I'll bring on the U of A guy who was with me.
Okay. Can he be a guest?
Let me cut in here before we get X-rated.
No. Hold on. Can that guy be a guest for a few minutes on next week's show? I want to hear the truth.
I will ask my friend Jeff with the last name initial W.
Okay.
If he has the time to come on.
That's all I want. I'm not going to participate next week's show unless that guy's here.
How many times did Chris vote for Duke in the Fox Sports poll?
I don't have Twitter. Did you have to have Twitter to vote?
I mean, I don't know which one. Like, I'd like to hear musings on why each of those teams should not, be in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Well,
all right, go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. I will conclude by saying that I do think that it was somebody in the upper echelon of Fox. It wasn't some loose cannon that just happened to put that tweet out. I think they were generally interested in seeing what window market was drawing the most attention. But we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I thought it was an amusing tweet nonetheless. All right. We're in overtime, time to answer some viewer questions and for panel answers in a free-for-all format. For those of you that are watching or listening, if you'd like to submit a question that we can answer or give you our opinions, just go to either the Gary P or We Are SC members message boards at wearesc.com. From there, you'll see the topic thread regarding questions for Inside the Trojans Huddle. All right. Question 1 from Gilbert in Arizona, Trojan. I assume he's from Gilbert, Arizona. With the added revenue coming in from joining the Big Ten, do you see USC making renovations to its facilities to build the most impressive facilities in the entire country so that no other team can negatively recruit against our facilities in the future? Think SoFi Stadium at the college level. Anybody have some thoughts on that?
We're not going to build a new SoFi if that's the question. But I mean, there's been a lot of talk about facility upgrades. And I think that was a part of Lincoln Riley's demand, or that was part of the pitch to him. So there will certainly be upgrades. I don't think they're going to fix the significant problems with the Coliseum. I think it's just too soon and too expensive to do that. So I think we're going to get what we get when it comes to the Coliseum.
I think they're going to upgrade the facilities. I think Lincoln said that when he first took the job. And there was also supposedly artists drawings about what they see as another football field, maybe an indoor facility. Eric, have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, there's certainly going to be new facilities built and upgrades. They've been talking about that for a while. USC is always going to have the land problem, right? I mean, you just can't go knocking buildings down in downtown and expand to where to have the size necessary to build the way these other programs are going to be able to. So in terms of, are they going to have facilities that are, that blow everyone else away? No, but what they're going to be able to do, I think, is constantly keep up with what they need to have, right? When they built the McKay Center, when you went in to that McKay Center on day one, it was unbelievable what they had. After about a year, again, it's what I had brought up when Larry Scott's talking about, when we renegotiate the media rights, we're going to be better than everyone. If you're not upgrading your facilities every 6 months, every year, every couple years, you're behind. And so the McKay Center was that. It was unbelievable when it got put in. 2 years into it, we got to start doing more stuff. And USC was really kind of comfortable just sort of sitting on what they had. So what I think they're going to be able to do is constantly upgrade where they need to now going forward. So I don't anticipate, once they get the ball rolling on that and get some stuff going up, no, I don't anticipate them getting lapped like they sort of have been with facilities. Because again, like Chris said a while ago, Lincoln Riley is not going to sit there and go, okay, well, I guess we'll just make do with what we have. He's going to push for what they need.
All right, let's go to question 2 from Phil in Las Vegas. Question for the panel. I'm 73 years old and I've been a Trojan fan since I can remember. I anticipate the Trojans being very good in 2023. And I have in my bucket list going to South Bend for a game. Can the panel guide me or give me some pointers about tickets, hotels, etc.? This probably is just a once in a lifetime trip for me, and I truly would like to make it a memorable one. Thanks, guys, and keep up the good work.
Eric will first suggest Southwest Airlines is the way to go. Yeah, Chicago, you just make a plan to spend a 4-day weekend in Chicago with the game in South Bend. And you've got a lot of time to kind of get in touch with friends and family and everybody on the WRC message board. They'll be chiming in with plenty of suggestions of where to stay, where to eat, and how to have a good time.
Yeah, the food recommendations would take all day.
Right.
Stay in Chicago, Navy Pier Pep Rally, and I would suggest taking the train over. The USC train is a lot of fun to do that with with other USC fans as a way to get there. Unless you love paying tolls. If you love paying if you just cannot get enough paying tolls, then drive. You have to make the drive.
There aren't that many. There's a toll booth about every quarter mile.
That's it. Right. So
Which is not
two
bad.
tires on the rental car, stop starts, you're good. But the train is, I mean, I remember that. That's how I got over there for that 2005 game, and that's a memorable experience.
Let me also suggest that there's nothing wrong with getting there and tailgating with USC people. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I would get away from the USC people, and I would actually interact with the donors, which is not something that I recommend at the Coliseum. In fact, I would say just the opposite of the Coliseum. Stay away from those people. But in South Bend, they're actually a very friendly group. There are a lot of people with a lot of football knowledge and a lot of history with this rivalry that are fun to talk to. And some of my best moments at that game, and it's my favorite game. I go to that game every year, no matter what's happening. But some of my favorite moments are the times when I'm tailgating with the Irish, Ara Parsegan and people like that, which is actually a lot of fun. And get out and see the campus. It really is a special place to watch a football game. So absolutely, you should do it. I'm going to try never to miss another USC Notre Dame game as long as I live, because I love that game so much. But yeah, go do it. It's great.
I would say 4 days. Navy Pier is a must, as it's already been brought up. Eating places, Harry Carey's is a special place. The owner of the late Cubs broadcaster, Harry Carey, or go to Ditka's. Ditka's is great, owned by Mike Ditka, former coach and tight end for the Chicago Bears. I think what you have to take into account is after the game, do you want to be caught driving or being on a Reuters bus or a train? I have stayed in South Bend only because I had been to Chicago so many times. What I would do is I go to the Navy Pier on Friday, and then I would drive out and try to get to Notre Dame's pep rally for that night. And I like staying close to Notre Dame. It's expensive, but I think well worth it, especially after the game. A 5 o'clock game, which is really ridiculous, depending on the weather in South Bend. Driving back can be a real pain if you can stay awake. So try to, based on your age, I would say find a way to, if you have to pay for a bus to go back and forth, a USC Reuters bus or something along those lines, or the suggestion of the train there. It's a fun trip. Really, it's hard for any of us to really tell you what it's like. I will just say this, and I think I speak for all of us. It more than lives up to its reputation. It is just unbelievably good. Even when the Trojans lose, you never felt like it was a bad weekend, and if the Trojans win, it's a much better situation. Okay, from Barry G in the OC, hey, Greg and panel, who is or are going to be our Phil Knight or John Reese when it comes to NIL, especially as it's related to recruiting offense and defensive linemen?
Chris, I think.
Yeah. Well, if it's going to be me, we're in a lot of trouble. Yeah, I don't know who that is. Whoever it is, they haven't stepped up to the plate yet. So I don't know that we have that person.
My fear is that a lot of the guys that I knew coming through that really carried a big financial weight have been alienated from the program from years before. I won't mention the names, but I will tell you they were really heavy hitters. I mean, really heavy hitters who had no problem. They were so dedicated to USC football. And what do you need? And that check was there. I don't see a lot of those people there now. Mark?
Who was that young man that went to USC who hung out with Jordan Campbell and was giving people rides around campus on the golf cart? He just had stupid money to float around.
The agent.
Remember, Eric, do you remember his name? He always said everything was crucial.
I don't remember his name.
You know what I'm talking about, though.
Dylan Baxter's golf cart ride, right?
Yeah. So there are plenty of students hanging around USC that can fulfill these, I don't know, swag bags. Let's call them whatever you want to call them. It's there. It's just do it. I mean, you talk about Phil Knight. Let's take his logo. Just do it. No one's going to stop you. No one. What can happen, right?
Okay. From Alta Loma Trojans in Claremont, is SC trying to keep Oregon out of the Big Ten Conference? Does it have any leverage? It seems that this would be to our advantage. They are our main West Coast recruiting competition, especially for the Big Uglies. Dropping them into a lesser conference would help neutralize Phil's financial backing. He's talking about Phil Knight and NIL capabilities. SC fans would love to move them to a lower conference. Their bright green uniforms would look nice on Boise State's blue field. Comments?
I don't know if we're trying to keep them out, but I noticed that they weren't a team that came with us. And so we weren't trying to bring them along very hard either. Everybody who watches this show, on even one occasion, knows how I feel about this. Kill them. Do not let them survive this. Drive it. Eric says they're in the desert, buried in this shallow grave. I think we need to do something to make their situation even worse. I don't know what they set the desert on fire, drop heavy stones on top of their shallow grave. I don't care. Kill them. Do not let them become a competitor to USC. There's no reason that we should support that. There's no reason they're needed in the Big Ten. They do not bring $100 million of yearly revenue. And while they are undoubtedly a top 20 football program right now, after 5 years in the Mountain West, they won't be. Someone else will take their place. And they'll just be like the University of Chicago or one of those other teams that used to play football at a high level and used to win some stuff. Well, Chicago's won national titles, so they won't be like them, but they'll be like one of those teams that used to be something and now they're nothing. That's what I hope happens.
I think that's the biggest point. USC didn't go there by themselves. UCLA came along. I mean, if they really wanted Oregon to come along, Oregon wouldn't have been surprised by that when it happened. I think it's interesting. I think Oregon and Stanford are the two programs that haven't put out statements about what happened or what their plans are or how they're going to do that. At least that I don't think I've seen it from those two. But so it'll be interesting. But yeah, the first steps, at least, it wasn't, hey, come along with us and we'll all do this together. And obviously, hundreds of people did not know that announcement was coming on that day. I think it was kept pretty tight, but people at USC knew and people at UCLA knew. So again, you could have had people at Oregon know if that was all part of the plan to bring them along. And it sure doesn't seem like the Big Ten is saying, oh, you guys can come, but only if we bring Oregon. I mean, that's the thing, is Oregon can say they want to come all they want, but the Big Ten still has however many teams there are, 55 teams in these conferences now, but there's 14 teams over there that, again, didn't seem to be clamoring to bring Oregon over with the two LA schools. And, they were happy to accept the two LA schools.
All right. How about from HUD in San Diego? What do you think is more likely this fall? The offense underperforms expectations, the defense outperforms expectations, or the offense and defense both meet expectations?
I think the defense outperforms. I think they just have a higher ceiling.
I agree with Mark. I think it's the defense outperforms what we think.
I think it's more likely that the offense will underperform, and I think the offense is going to be great. It's just the expectations are so sky high for the offense that if they average 38 points a game, I think there'd be a lot of people saying, that's not very good. So I think that's the most likely outcome. I'm not sure that anybody expects a ton from the defense, so they can they can outperform expectations, I suppose, by just playing moderately good football. But that offense is going to have to be absolutely lights out every week in order to meet expectations. So it's going to be tough to do, as good as I think they're going to be, and I think they're going to score 40 points a game.
I'm with Chris. I think they're going to score 77 points a game. So I'm going to say that they underperform that. I'm going to take the under on my own set expectation. The defense outperforming expectations, I think, is tough. Offenses are good now, and the teams they play, there's not a ton of talent everywhere, but there's some quarterbacks on the teams they play, and offensive coordinators. It's an offensive driven college football right now. Teams are going to score points, and this defense, I think, plays in a way where there's going to be some big plays that they give up, and that's going to lead to points. So again, if you're talking about expectations of points per game or yards per game. It's tough to exactly say what that is because I'm not sure what the generic expectations are of either side, but I would lean with Chris on there's so much being put on that offense right now to just absolutely blow away everything that USC has done the last 4 or 5 years. That's going to be, if they go against Rice and they don't score a touchdown on their first 4 possessions, it's going to be, hey, what's going on? What's happening here? And the defense, they're still, I think teams are going to be able to run up the middle a little bit, or at least we'll work that a little bit. And you've got kind of questions still in the secondary. How does that work together? How do they all mesh? So again, I wouldn't expect some top 20, defense to roll out there this year.
Why'd you bring up Rice? Now we're going to have to listen
There
to
we go.
Cats pump them up again. Go ahead, Greg. Let's hear it. Go Owls.
All right. A reminder again, if you have a question or comments for our panel, go to either of the We Are SC message boards and click on the thread that pertains to Inside the Trojans Huddle viewer, or if you want some questions answered, we'd be more than happy to answer them for you. And we would like to thank all of you. That's a wrap for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. Again, a big thank you to this week's panel of Mark Culkin, Chris Arledge, Eric McKenney, and a special thank you to all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Till next Tuesday, this is your host, Greg Katz, reminding you all to fight on, everybody.